Schoolhouse program with all sorts of educational settings throughout the state and other states, basically sharing solar-based activities and lessons with teachers. Probably the past 5 or 7 years, I've really gotten into climate topics and really found my way to climate solutions as a way to engage students and empower them. So today, I really want to just share, as you guys are working on projects with your students for this year's STEAM Showcase, how to connect some of the project ideas that your students are having with climate solutions. And so the first thing I'm reflecting on the last 6 or 7 years is the language or the vocabulary of climate is always confusing sometimes. So this is text on the screen, but I will read through it. Is there's a couple different categories, and one is adaptation, and that's basically adapting things that we do to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Some local examples are wildfires, drought, flooding. And then if you're, adapting practices that also mitigate or reduce greenhouse gases, those are best. Resilience is another word that's used a lot in climate action world. And really, it's about adapting to changes that are occurring now and preparing for future changes. So being better prepared to bounce back and also better anticipating changes that are coming. So the word mitigation, that's a fancy word for saying we're trying to reduce or sequester greenhouse gases, CO2 and other gases that are contributing to global warming and climate change. And there's a whole menu on it from a resource called Drawdown that I'll show in a second that addresses this kind of action. Climate science, a lot of times when you're told to teach about climate change, it's really, you're only talking about the problem or the science. I'm not going to go over the science of climate change today, because there's other resources for that, but I put that here. It's its own little thing. You should sort of understand what the problem is and then segue to solutions. Climate justice. This is linking how basically that a lot of the folks that are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change are also have the least ability to react or become more resilient. So as we develop actions or solutions, we need to take that into consideration. Also, I've learned through all sorts of climate solutions that when you develop community connections, working with local organizations that to improve resilience in your own community, it's a real big bonus. So that's a piece that I've seen come up over and over. And then as far as tying careers and jobs to this, there's a whole lot of potential careers and jobs. Some of them exist and some of them are new. Both my daughters are working in wildfire related jobs. They're in their 20s. These are kind of new fields over the last, 15 to 20 years. So, okay. This resource is just to let you know that a lot of school districts in our county have passed climate action resolutions, but mostly they've been forgotten. And these hot links I will be shared with you. So if you want to, like Santa Rosa City Schools has a climate action resolution that the school board passed back in 2018. West Sonoma County, where I'm at, Sebastopol, does also. Most people have forgotten about them. But as your students explore climate solutions, you can dig this up and see what the resolution says, and see if you can help your school district move it along towards addressing some of these things. So I'm listing the resources here that I'll share with you, and you'll have these links to explore. Project Drawdown is this menu of climate solutions that a group of analysts worldwide came up with 80 to 100 solutions back in 2016, 17. And it's an incredible portal of solutions that you can always reference as a to get some technical background and also a description. And then I've been hosting these things called Sebastopol Carbon Conversations, which is a local in-person little workshop seminars at the Sebastopol Grange. And I tend to find a topic on a solution and then find local organizations that are doing something in the community around that solution. So each one of these topics that are I've recorded it and posted some resources with each of them. They're a place to sort of go and learn a little more, and we'll take a little tour of that in a moment. Sonoma County, excuse me, has been working on climate action and resiliency strategies for the past number of years, and there's a link to some reports there. I will say that a lot of this has probably not been, you know, filtered and made student friendly, but yet some of it is, but some of it's a work in progress as far as that's concerned. And then I'll show a slide on some climate resiliency topics, and then I have a few solar energy applications because that's been my area that I focused in a lot. And then we already talked about the climate action resolutions. I just wanted to put this up. This is a kind of an example of adaptation resilience solutions versus mitigation or greenhouse gas reduction type of actions. Um, for a long while, the folks in the climate sector were really, really focusing on just the right-hand side, you know, shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources, transportation, electric cars, biking, all this stuff. There's a lot of focus on reducing emissions so that we can help slow the process. And then on the left side is adaptation or resilience, and these are things that um, are being done in response to the impacts of climate change impacts. So there's a lot of things you can do with wildfire resilience, wildfire preparedness, and even flood stuff. And I'll come back to some of this in a minute. But those are just an example of kind of the two different categories of climate action. And sometimes they overlap. I grabbed this icon from the Glendale Environmental Coalition down in Southern California. It's that you can have dialogues about um, which ones are overlapping. I find that if you're looking at a solution in the climate resilience sector that you want to implement, don't create a worse problem. Don't adopt a measure that is also going to start polluting, continue to pollute. So that's sort of this challenge. Okay, so I put this slide in just because this was how do you get successful change? And this was from a leader of the Solar Industry Association. He was saying that, first of all, the thing that you're proposing has to work. Then you need the right kinds of incentives and policy, and then lots of education on how to use it and how to install it if that's needed. So you need all three. So a lot of times we think we we design a solution physically, and then to really actually get it adopted, it needs these other things wrapped around it. So I thought I would share that with you. Okay, so drawdown. I first learned of this in 2017 when there was a book that came out, and Paul Hawken, the author or editor, gave a presentation in Healdsburg, and quite frankly, I was blown away with just this diverse menu of things that are on this list. And the idea of drawdown is that if all these solutions were scaled up, that we would hit a point where we started to draw down and reduce the amount of CO2 in the air. And there's a few more things. So everything on the drawdown list is being done in the world at this point. It's not like some solution that's being dreamt up. It's being done today at some scale somewhere. And it also has other benefits. It helps improve lives in other ways. But all of them have this common denominator of reducing or sequestering emissions. By the way, sequestering emissions is just basically plant life soaking up CO2 or that kind of thing. Yeah, and I will say that most of the drawdown solutions are not identified as improving resilience. So that's a distinct difference from, they may improve, for example, food resilience, but not necessarily, resilient to climate impacts of climate change. And here's some examples. It's a wide range of things. So some of these are clean energy implications, energy efficient buildings, storing energy so that batteries for storing energy, and so on. Then there's a lot of landscape types of measures that will help reduce emissions. Each one, so let's go here. This is a ranking. They no longer rank them because I think that everybody was focused too much on the top 10 or something. But they looked at each one of these and estimated how much CO2 equivalents you could reduce, how much it would cost to implement, and how much dollar savings as well. So there's different categories of buildings, food, agriculture, land use, health and education. One of the top 2 measures on the top 10 was educating girls and access to Planned Parenthood. That was a measure. Also, these other things. So here's one example is onshore wind turbines. If you click on their website, it'll pull up the details here and describe a little bit about wind energy and how much, how much emissions we can save, how much it might cost. There's also offshore wind turbines, which is being developed in Northern California off the coast. That's a project in California and East Coast that's being looked at because there's such potential there. Food waste is another one that has a lot of emissions connected to it. So anything that we can do to reduce food waste, there's some California laws that have been going into effect recently that are trying to address this. More food waste, regenerative agriculture. This is, how do you translate that? That's basically, it's tending your soil so it actually is healthier and can absorb carbon as a strategy for capturing a lot of carbon and through different agricultural practices. Composting is related to that as well. So a few resiliency measures. We did a carbon conversation on rainwater harvesting. So why is this a resiliency measure? It's climate change, you could say, is impacting the way we get our rain patterns. So we now know, I've heard of atmospheric rivers, which 10 years ago that wasn't a thing. Um, so we get a lot of water all at once, and then we have long dry spells. So the idea of resilience is that we're collecting rainwater when it's readily abundant, so that we can use it in the summer for either irrigation or for fire resilience. And locally, Salmon Creek School out in Occidental put in a 500,000 gallon rainwater catchment just the last few years to help towards this kind of thing. Fire ecology, yeah, there's a lot going on here to try to get a handle on um, better managing our wildlands and reducing our risks to the built environment. My youngest daughter's studying prescribed burns at grad program in San Jose State, and my oldest daughter is leading a fire safe council in Santa Monica Mountains. So fire, it's unfortunately, but this is something we're going to have to be paying attention to. And there's a lot of little things that can be done as a project that helps in this sector. Now, this is kind of a odd one, maybe, but beavers are these nature's structural engineers and water engineers that um, help slow down streams and rivers to actually spread it out and replenish the aquifers. And so there's actually efforts here in Sonoma County and elsewhere to reintroduce beaver populations to let them do their thing and provide the benefits. So carbon conversations, we've tackled a lot of different topics, bikes, compost, rainwater cisterns, electrifying homes, etc. And there is a link to the archives. And then solar energy applications, we can't really see this poster, but on this link here, it's basically showing how this solar electric technology can be used for a lot of different things, from small to large, from powering boats, cars, planes, to communication systems, satellites, crosswalk signals, and homes, etc. So yeah, that's what's on this website. There's a little video, 10-minute video that shows the history of solar cell development and its applications, and also some articles on different applications. So I'll pause there. I was going to toggle over and show you some of the websites that I streamed right through, but did any of that pique any questions, create any questions as I zoomed right through it?
It was great. Thank you. I've been taking screenshots along the way. Great
Oh,
resources.
yes.
Me too. I already add them to the slide for my students, some of them.
Oh, great. Um, I guess I could send you the PDF if that's easier, with the links. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about how, yeah, follow-up question of any of that.
I have one question about a general thing is like, this is great and I love to see all this solution and website and everything, but I don't know how to bring them to my student because it's so many information and I present them the project. They already have ideas. and they are all different ISD in all my different groups. But now I don't know how can I manage to give them like resources to improve the first ideas they had,
Yeah.
to bring them to the next step. And I feel there is a lot of content, and yeah.
Yeah, that is a really good question. How do I toggle this? Maybe I don't know if I can.
Are you talking about your slides, Tor?
Can you see this website that I'm seeing? This drawdown? Big.
No, we're looking at your slideshow stuff.
Okay,
So
so I will.
if you stop sharing, you could share again and focus on what you want us to look at.
Yeah, let me. This is a way to answer that question.
Awesome.
Um, so are you seeing that Project Drawdown web page?
Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah. So say your students are already creating ideas about what they want to do, and um, what you might have them do is this is drawdown.org/solutions. It's a library of solutions, and you can task them like see if you can find your idea in here. And so it's either a table of solutions. So what have we got going? How do they, so there's all kinds of things. So say they are doing, I don't know, electric bikes. Then they come down here and they find this little bit of narrative um, about electric bikes and how their the potential for, adding, adopting more of this and creating more benefits. So, like I said, this one is like this kind of math and gigatons of energy, CO2 saved, and so forth. I paused there to try to figure out a way to teach that to your students, but it's it's kind of neat. You need to know how to teach about dimensional analysis and stuff to sort of do that kind of math. But if you're here and they are doing electric bikes, the question is, what can you ask of them to pull from some of this? So, because this hasn't been filtered for students. So there's a lot of even for adults. So there's sometimes might go, what are the co-benefits of electric bikes, so that they can add that to their narrative of their story. Like, why is it an important? What climate benefits does it have? And then the other thing is, I find interesting is when they've come up with this project idea that is a solution of some sort, and the idea is to like, what are multiple benefits? So we can say this might help answer the benefits to climate, reducing emissions for climate reasons, but what are the other benefits to riding a bike or electric bikes? And so they should brainstorm and come up with those ideas too, because when you have a solution that has a whole lot of benefits, then it's a really good solution. So get them to expand upon, like, think out other than this is really cool, this device is really cool. What else? What other benefits does it include? So yeah, it's a little tricky, but I think if this is common setup for each one of these solutions, that they'll give some numbers that I honestly have a hard. I mean, I can understand like how many gigatons. That's a big number of amount of CO2. That's the potential savings worldwide over the next 20 years. So I'm struggling to say that your students will understand what that means, but anyway, that's kind of how this works.
No,
there
but
is,
maybe they could find some answer and basis for their project and maybe go after a bit further with a new innovation or help them to brainstorm about the benefit, as you say, that they could present on their project. So this is a
yeah,
good point.
yeah, um, yeah, like taking an existing idea and then brainstorming it and innovation. But I know one teacher I talked to with did like a Shark Tank kind of thing, but that's different, a little bit different because it was like taking an existing design and going, okay, that's cool, but how can we change it? Um, so this is also a place where um, I don't know how much you're going to find here about innovations on any one of these particular topics. So, I mean, but it is a starting point and a reference that it is part of this um, bigger effort to like there's other resources, but you might find the key words here. And if you wanted to go searching for some additional information, you might go, what are some innovations in electric bikes, for example? And then they could find that. There is another, sorry, web page. It's called Regeneration. Okay, apologize. Back here. So this Paul Hawken, who started Drawdown, got tired of Drawdown and went over and started something new. It's called Regeneration, and there's all these uh, topics here. Let me see if I can show it. They're similar to Drawdown, but there's also a bunch of sort of action items and places to learn more about the these topics. So like putting solar voltaics with agriculture. What are some innovations? So you can find here a little bit more detail and different kinds of information than what's posted on Drawdown. So this is regeneration.org Nexus. Um, the idea of fish farming, what are some of the way? And I think the common denominator with this whole family of projects is that humans have kind of left a negative impact on a lot of ecosystems, and the general theme is how do we restore that and regenerate? They use the word regenerate. So, and by doing so, help thinking more like the health of the environment is will actually benefit us. So there's a lot of this effort here towards that, but it goes towards feeding us and providing other solutions. So, all right, let me toggle to one other one. Yeah, and that's a very good question. It's like, how do you in an organized way, have students go look this? But I think the multi-benefit thing, as they're developing their projects, is ask them like, what are some of the benefits, the addition multiple benefits? Um, there's an organization called Multi-Solving. It talks a little bit about it, but it's sort of the same things. Multi-benefits, multi-solving. You come up with an innovation that has lots of benefits, then the exercises to help verbalize what those are and identify them as you're developing it. So I'm just showing you the archives of the Carbon Conversations. We did a bunch of different topics, including reuse and repair, the ability to repair things, because we do. It's I don't need to tell you, it's kind of absurd how much we planned obsolescence for things. That would be an innovation. Make something that lasts and is repairable. So what we have here, if you click on this, there's some slides, a recording, a link to our local group called from the Reuse Alliance in Santa Rosa on that particular topic. We did an exploration on water resiliency and how our local water systems are there. So, I share this with you, and it was in putting this together. It's I don't know if your students get lost here or if they'll find something useful. It's sort of if it's a topic that they're related to what they're coming up with, then they'll find something useful here. So, we did electrifying your home, rainwater cisterns. That's a conversation we're having about LA right now. It's like, do you rebuild after the fires with the rainwater cisterns in every driveway or in the community? So those are what's here. Yeah. So what kind of projects are they coming up with, man?
So we just start this week, so it's not. But I was when I see what I see in the first step, it's like they are just go straight ahead. Like I will build, like there is a fire in LA, a fire solution for all the country, and uh, yeah. But how we are gonna do? Or I will make a big sculpture statue in West, like to. But I feel we like they go straight ahead in the idea. And even if I told them like take your time to think, to look at what you want to do, to talk with your mates, it's like pretty hard to organize. But maybe I need more time to see the project like working on. But
Yeah. That I remember visiting the Getty museums in LA. And the one near Malibu seemed fine. It survived the fires. And then there's the big one that's on the 405, and they designed that to withstand wildfire. In fact, they have all the materials are stone or outside. They have a really big reservoir of water underneath their parking garage that they designed in there to be resilient, because they knew they've already withstood a fire about 5 years ago. And so now that's a lot so I'm looking at that and going like, well, what can you learn from that is there certain aspects like that for every home, or is it more communal? So there's both having more water accessible and then also managing your landscape and your building materials. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to it.
but you can also extend to the climate and how we can like reduce our impact to reduce the fire and risk of fire.
Yeah. So, and those things are, we've in our community we've seen fires over the past years. Yeah, it's sort of like I drive up Mark West Springs, and I think, okay, a lot of homes were rebuilt. How resilient are they? I mean, they have, I think there's some things they've done differently. like metal roofs and things like that. But yeah. So like if you're rebuilding a whole community, what would you do differently to make it more fire resistant? And that would be like,
A big project.
yeah, a big project, but you know, there's like every little bit helps. And then I think the thing that I've seen also a lot is with disasters, if we're talking about resiliency during disasters, is communications. Like we all live with cell phone and such, and in a lot of places those stop working. So like radio, does radio, does radio, old school, what's a radio? Kids will, I think I've seen that like, what's a radio? Um, anyway, so I think part of this is not only to look at the disasters, but um, like for instance, with the flooding tendencies, is that if you start to adopt strategies where you slow down the water and push, let it flow out into fields and let it sink down into the ground, you're addressing some flooding issues, challenges, but also replenishing our groundwater, which, you know, I guess the trick with this is how do you share all these things with your students?
Yeah, there is so many way to, but I think they have to choose as well what they want to do and
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think the other thing that I barely touched upon was this justice kind of idea. And it's if they're coming up with a solution, then also ask them to think like, how do you make that available to everyone?
Mm-mm.
You know, so equitable and um that's and not just because you can afford it kind of thing. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe we're not asking to solve everything, but that is sort of a common thing when I talk about solar energy is like, oh, it's too expensive for my house, you know, and they think of the one thing, the big panels on the roof, and then the discussion is like, well, what is accessible? How can you make it more accessible? So, um, let's see if there was something else. Yeah, one more thing.
Manon, while Tor's looking for his thing, I'm wondering about um, a voice and choice board or opportunity where, there could be some different things available for them to dive into, like explore the Sebastopol Conversations archive, explore, kind of, I've done it on a Google slide before where they, it's like there's little links to maybe 6 options to explore. And maybe they could have some guided exploration time and kind of see where that journey takes them and how it connects to things they're already interested in versus it needing to be like, you or someone presenting each one on its own to them as a whole class. Let them really have an exploratory time
Yeah.
with whatever resources are feeling relevant and important right now.
Yeah, I already built like a slide
Mhm.
with the links that you gave us, some of the links you gave us in the Padlet to like make some content for them. But I think this link would be also a great idea to explore. And I was also thinking build like some communal knowledge. We already talked the 2 past weeks about climate and the weather forecast, what's the difference and la 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 and ecosystem before. So
Perfect.
yeah, but
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great foundation.
Mm,
That's good. It reminds me also of a climate writing activity that I crafted a few years ago, and it was the idea was that students picked one of those solutions in Drawdown that interests them.
mm,
Then they did an internet search to find an organization or person that was actually working on something like that, and then write an article. about, you know, there were some ingredients to the article, but the idea was to then show that somebody, a person or an organization was actually doing something. And the closer to home, the better, because it's just makes it
Mm.
more or less abstract. Um, but I've piloted that with a few places. That's a little more focused, but it's sort of that extra step saying, can you find, that's kind of what I go through when I try to come up with topics for the carbon conversation is like, who's doing this? I want to hear from them and I want to show, and they can help say that this is possible and what are the challenges and things like that. So, um, that may be yet another stretch to make those connections. But we live in this county that has a lot of different organizations and people doing things related to what you're studying. And sometimes that's like, oh, somebody's doing that in my backyard already. I found some guy that was doing rainwater cisterns for homes recently, and it's like, oh, anyway.
Yeah, it's a good point to link that to the community as well and just look at the neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the LA fires remind me also about go bags that, I was like, oh, I don't have a go bag ready. Because I've relaxed. What would be in your go bag, kind of thing. Anyway, I guess the thing too with for my health and sanity is not always to focus on the disaster component of it. Um, and what I find kind of cool is like, for instance, I like to bicycle around town and just errands and city biking kind of thing. So I started like, okay, I want to have some fun with a thing that has a climate or environmental benefit. So, as they're looking at their solution or their thing, find not everything has to be fun, but some joy, like, oh, well, I got to meet new friends that are also like bicycling and by the way, we're also helping reduce emissions. So, I mean, I don't know. It's it makes it like I also went to this solar home building competition that colleges participated in a few years ago. And every house, it was 10 of them, was completely powered by the sun, but they were all different. They all had different styles, different strategies, and different feature rooftop gardens, this and that. And if you went there and said, which one do you like? You go, oh, I like that one and that one. And my takeaway was that it was really cool that they were all independently powered by the sun with clean energy, but it was also equally important that you could be creative and creating these solutions. And so that there's a lot of different ways to tackle the problem and you can still get to be creative and which is I think is kind of a good thing, to encourage. So
Definitely. Thank you.
yeah. Aaron, any questions or thoughts as we
Sorry.
oh Kelly.
Sorry, I'm causing trouble over here because you made me think, Tor, about this resource that's in the Padlet. I don't know how familiar you are with Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, but I love this finding joy in climate action and centering your climate actions and your solutionary designs around your joy points and your strengths. So that's something that, as you were speaking, Tor, it reminded me. And it's just a really great graphic organizer. It's pretty simple. I think it's really accessible. So just another way for students to explore and reflect. And she's got an amazing, I love her. I've seen her speak. And that's what I was causing trouble with. So I'll put the link to it's like a 2-minute video. So, I love these like little smatterings that are
Yeah.
not too much, but enough to just kind of engage. So I like these two together as a way of approaching solutionary design.
Yeah, she has a new book out, I think.
Oh,
So
oh, awesome.
I'm waiting at the library for my turn to read it.
Oh,
But
awesome. I didn't realize that. I'll have to pay attention.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think, I mean, I'll just reiterate that engaging students in finding on the solutions to a problem or a situation, um, they engage. I think I've seen it over and over again. They like the challenge, and it also is a little empowering, and they feel good about it as opposed to if you only talked about the problem. Um, so anyway, that's why I dig this project. So it's just figuring out how to put it all together. But where are you teaching, Anna?
Me?
Yeah.
At Slater Middle School, but I'm linked to the French American Charter School and I
Okay.
teach in French usually. So I have a lot of resources in English, but they are happy to have some English because they are half of their day in French. Uh, but it's super interesting and I know a lot of things about the French climate action. So I like them to also discover this part. Yeah.
Cool. Well, excited to see what your class does.
Yeah, let's see that. Surprise for everyone.
Aaron, where are you teaching at?
I'm the STEM coordinator or the director of STEM for like 40 Boys and Girls Club sites. So I've been working with groups of kids and introducing sort of new platforms and technologies I'm interested in using for these projects. We've got some good ideas around urban farming, around like sort of automated gardening, that community based projects. Also, what else? Ah, um, I think like we we found some consensus around like our the strategy by the kids, of course, is like really we just want to be lazy. We don't want to be out shuttling ourselves around in a 2-ton vehicle for a part of the day with millions of little explosions of fossil fuel anyway. Just like bring the stuff to us.
Oh, there you go.
Like experiences, the opportunities, we're kind of there for some of the things, so
Oh, as
rather
far as
than
imagining how that would work.
yeah, it's I mean like a lot of these kids have been through COVID and those times and kind of just like like there's I don't know, the attitude about it is kind of um what were the ideas? Like yeah, a robot delivery service for food and goods and stuff that was just like it's like not immediate but it'd be very efficient and it could be done on tracks or things like that. So there's cool discussions. Now
Yeah.
I don't know who's actually going to follow through with any of these things because they're after school. No, there's no grades, there's no teachers, there's no accountability really. So
Yeah.
we're just we're just getting as far as we can with who we got. And it's been fun.
Mhm. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah. The
sharing.
idea generation is it's fun to throw ideas around and then like how do you take it further? But yeah, one thing I'll say is that a lot of times with advanced technology, I find myself going, um, wait, there was an old school way to do that, kind of thing. So, so for example, we use solar ovens to cook with, and the sun keeps moving in the sky. So I have this little solar tracker that you put the oven on and it follows the sun. And it's really simple. It's just a solar cell and a motor and just the configuration. So, but with modern tools like Arduinos and robotics and stuff, there's this urge to program. and and so I was working with a teacher who was like trying to incorporate robotics and Arduino programming and solar tracking. And I said, but this is the simple, easy way to do it. So there's a time to admit there's times where I'll run across like this the old school or the simple way, and then but it would be cool to enhance that with some of the new modern technology. So